He's been called many names, from Mr. Fixer to even the cleaner in the South African mining sector. What we do know for sure, he's definitely not shy of a challenge. This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Neal Froneman, the chief executive of Sibanye Gold, joins me to talk about his interest in a sector where most giants want to escape from. It's all about platinum. Welcome to Tonight. Would you take on Joseph Mutunjwa in the platinum sector, Neal Froneman, because he's the big guy at the moment?
Good evening, Bruce. Look, one of our operations, the majority union, is AMCU, so we do deal with AMCU and Joseph. Absolutely, you know, we've said that we will not be threatened or intimidated by ridiculous demands. But more so, we are more focused on winning the hearts and minds of our employees, working with unions, but we won't be bullied.
Now, when we look at the platinum sector, it's an interesting space. Anglo-American has announced the sale of Rustenburg assets. They say that they're looking, and government would like to see a South African partner to come in and take over the Rustenburg assets. You have employed a guy called Steve Shepherd, a former platinum analyst. If I connect the dots, make a couple of crazy assumptions, might you be interested in buying some Rustenburg mines?
Absolutely, we're interested. We have said that we are looking at 5 specific targets. We've been through the front door. Anglo have announced publicly that they're sellers. We have said we are interested in good quality assets. They are good quality assets. They've become non-core. We think that the skills that we've demonstrated at Sibanye are transferable, and therefore we are interested.
Are they different beasts, though? I mean, what I know about gold mining and platinum mining is dangerous. It's like giving me a hand grenade and ask me which way is up. Are there sufficient similarities between gold mining and deep-level platinum mining to say we transfer that same format across?
At a high level, yes. Mineral resource management is a bit different. But certainly, if you define our operating skills as hard rock, narrow tabular, labor intensive, medium to deep level mining, that's exactly what happens in the platinum sector. The processing is different, but those skills you can acquire, or you should acquire, with the assets where appropriate.
But the investment opportunity is also fundamentally different. The gold price is driven by sentiment, by investability, by global crisis. Platinum is driven by industrial use. They're quite different disciplines there as well.
Oh, absolutely. We don't have to market gold. Gold markets itself. And making any investment decision into any other commodity, remember we produce a little bit of uranium, not too different in terms of having to understand the market, but certainly we've made it our business to understand the market. We've engaged with experts, so we have a good understanding of the platinum market. We're bullish about it, and we still see the value to create, or we see the opportunity to create value.
Now, we talk to Anglo-American Platinum, you say to them, well, if you can't make money out of it as the world's biggest producer of platinum, how can anybody else make money out of it? And Chris Griffith's response was quite cryptic, but basically suggesting, and in the same way as you took up the South African assets of Goldfields, and you've turned those around with great results coming through recently, would that be something that you could do in the platinum sector too? Take assets that are off the radar for a big corporate and turn them around?
Yes, absolutely. You know, if we'd had this discussion on the launch of Sibanye, you probably would have also been skeptical. But certainly what happens is they become non-core. They don't quite get the focus and attention that they require.
And the enormous amounts of capital they would require.
And we're willing to invest in South Africa. We have been to see government. We've put up our hand as wanting to be seen as the South African mining champion. We've already invested a lot of money, even in the short space of time of Sibanye. We're willing to invest into the capital required for those assets. And it all comes down to, as long as we can buy them for the right price, that's earnings enhancing on a per share basis for our shareholders, it's doable. Okay,
and what about the labour force? The labour force is battered. The labour force is bruised in that Rustenburg area. There are 20,000 people who work at the Anglo Platinum mines who aren't quite sure about their futures. When you look at the possibilities, is it a rationalisation likelihood? Is it a growth possibility? What are the options open to you?
Well, I think the recipe that we applied at Sibanye is probably very similar. We also inherited employees that were demoralized. They had been put up for sale. They knew they were non-core. The cash that was being generated was going into other investments. I don't think it's too different in the platinum sector. We would come in, we would be able to re-energize the system. We work very well with our employees. If you talk to our employees today, they buy into the Sibanye brand, they buy into the creation of a longer term, more sustainable business, not just for them but for their children as well. Our vision is to create superior value for all stakeholders, not just our employees, our shareholders, but for our employees, our communities. And that's very necessary, and I think probably every mining company is looking at those type of things. So I have a high degree of confidence in being able to change the morale, impact positively on people. We've got some very nice modern management styles. I think we have a lower overhead structure than perhaps Anglo Platinum. I'm not suggesting we're better operators than them, but just the focus and that intention and energy that comes in with a new acquisition, I think we would do it better.
You've worked on the Sibanye side. You would hope that would permeate into any new acquisitions you might make in the future. But it is a sector that is quite damaged, and I think probably quite brittle. How do you go through that process of restoring that level of confidence without having to take also perhaps some of the hard decisions that will need to be taken? Say, guys, we can operate this, but there are 20,000 people here, we can do it with 16 or 15 or whatever the case might be.
Well, I think, you know, taking more people out of the system could be very destructive because, as you say, it's brittle. I think winning the hearts and minds of those employees by getting them to be more productive and increasing output is probably a better alternative. We achieved that at Sibanye. At Sibanye we did go through a rationalization, but I have to say the headcount changed by 7,000 people out of 40-odd thousand. But a lot of that was achieved with very little retrenchments. You know, I can almost say a couple of hundred people were forcibly retrenched, but we replaced contractors. There were early retirements, there were voluntary separations. So there is a way of restructuring the business without having to go into forced retrenchments. And it's about finding those balances where you don't destroy morale, you show good intent, and you do the right things commercially.
Mark Kidifani and Tito Mboweni work together at Anglo Gold Ashanti. Mark Kidifani is Chief Executive, Tito Mboweni is Chairman. He was on the show just the other day, and we were talking about productivity, as Mark Kidifani calls it, productivity. And he says we need to sort out South Africa's productivity levels if we're going to see a balance between job stability and the future of South Africa. He argues it's a productivity future. You throw that to Tito Mboweni and he gets quite cross. And he says we've got to restore imbalances of the past. Where are you in terms of racial transformation of Sibanye? Because the DMR will have a look at that when it comes to how you will manage the platinum assets that you might acquire in the future.
I've been out of the, let's call it the deep level major mining industry for 10 years now. I came back recently to head up Sibanye, and I can tell you I've seen radical transformation. Now, I don't think we could ever say it's complete, but I think that we need to acknowledge that there's been very, very substantial transformation. We also need to acknowledge that the skills required to do some of the labor-intensive jobs in the mining industry is a low level of skill. And you can only pay so much for that level of skill. Of course, if we mechanize, there's a higher level of skill, but there's higher productivity levels. So Mark is...
And consequently fewer jobs available as well.
Absolutely, and I think if we are loyal to South Africa, creating more high-level jobs may not be exactly the right solution, because we have a large unemployed mass that maybe doesn't have the requisite skills. So
but doesn't that put us on an inevitable continual collision path between a union grouping like AMCU and management of companies who say, we're providing jobs? The guys are saying, well, pay more for these jobs.
Yeah.
And that's the conflict.
Absolutely, and that's why, to try and convince the unions that your model is the right model, you end up in an ideological difference, and there is just no bridge that bridges that gap. And our focus is not to convince the unions, it's to convince our employees, win the hearts and minds of our employees, do the right things for them, get them aligned with you, get them benefiting from the profit through gain share schemes, which will drive productivity. It'll obviously provide comfort to shareholders because they'll be getting dividends. So it's a win-win. You really have to focus on winning the hearts and minds of your employees and not the unions.
But when there's been such a big breakdown of trust between owners and employees, as there has been in the platinum sector, is that fixable?
It is fixable. We at Sibanye are making small inroads into that. It's not fixable overnight, but you first of all got to identify what are those key issues that cause the hardships that our employees are exposed to. And we've done a survey, and we have found that it's indebtedness. The indebtedness is probably first and foremost in their minds. Secondly is housing and the establishment of own houses that they pay for through bonds. They can afford the rates and taxes, the water and all those sort of things through their living out allowance. And if you address those two key issues, you can then move to the next step. We find in our survey it's not about what they earn, it's about their take-home pay, and we can make a difference to that.
Neal Froneman, nice to see you. We watch the space with interest to see just what happens in the platinum belt. Neal Froneman, Chief Executive of Sibanye Gold, expressing an interest in platinum assets. Mark Kidifani's expressed an interest in selling platinum assets. Government is keen for those assets to go to a South African company. Could the buyer be sitting at this table? Thank you for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Till then, good night.